And the final Bootstrap demo that we're going to be going through in this particular course is actually using the HTML helper editor 4. And we're going to demonstrate how to pass in HTML attributes into the editor 4 method call. And then using editor 4 and overriding the default templates, we're going to construct a Bootstrap vertical, inline, and horizontal forms. One of the new features in ASP.NET MVC 5.1 is the ability to pass in extra HTML attributes as an anonymous object into the editor 4 HTML helper method. So we'll go ahead and do a demo on how that works, also demonstrating how to integrate Bootstrap forms into your MVC 5.0 application. So to get started, we need a new project. We're going to go File, New Project. We're going to select the ASP.NET Web Application Project. We'll go with the default project name, and we will click OK. We're now going to select the MVC template, make sure that our MVC core references are checked. We'll change our authentication to no authentication. We don't require any unit tests for this project, so we'll leave that unchecked. And we also are not going to be hosting it in the cloud, so we'll leave that unchecked. We'll click OK. And now Visual Studio will create our new MVC 5.0 app project. As a best practice, we like to rebuild our solution to make sure that everything builds as expected, and then quickly run it in Internet Explorer to make sure that Visual Studio created our project successfully. All right, excellent. We have created a new project and it has run successfully. Now, on this particular demo, what we're going to do is we're actually going to demonstrate how to create a contact form in MVC 5.1 using the editor 4 HTML helper method. Now, the default content that's created in the MVC 5.1 project or 5.0 project is this website that has a home, about, and a contact. And on this contact page, we're actually going to add a contact form. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to close Internet Explorer, and we're actually going to come in here and we're going to create a model to collect our information for our form. So we're going to right-click on this, and we're going to add new item. Actually, we'll just do add class, since our model is just a simple class. And we're going to call this particular class, we'll call it contact. And this is where we'll store the information for our contact model. Now in here, we're going to keep this really, really simple. We're going to put in 4 properties: public, string, first name, get set, and we're just going to copy this. So we'll have first name, last name, email, phone. Now, one of the cool things about MVC is we have the ability to put some attributes on these properties to help put some extra display type information and display it on our actual view. So we'll say display, and we'll do name. Actually, we need to put actually include a reference to data annotations, name. So we'll say first name. Now we're going to use this thing called prompt. What prompt will do is we're going to set it up to actually be a placeholder on our form, so that in HTML5 it'll have kind of like a disabled, grayed out kind of looking text in our text box, kind of informing the user what to type in. So we'll type enter your first name. And we're going to copy that and put that on all of our properties. And so we'll just change this to say last, enter your last name, email, address, enter your email address, and then finally we'll say, mobile phone. Enter your mobile phone number. All right, so now we have our contact model set up to collect the information on our contact form. So now we're going to go back to our view, and we will go under Home, Contact. Now in our view, underneath our address and email address information, we're going to add a new form. Using our HTML helper methods to build our form, we'll use a using statement, html.begin form, and we're actually going to have it point to our home controller, oh, I always get this mixed up. It goes action first, then controller. So we'll change that to our contact action, home. Then we're going to pass in a null value for our route value dictionary. And then we're going to give it a form method of post. And we'll put our opening and closing braces. And now in here, we're actually going to put in our next HTML helper, which is actually going to build our form for us. So editor for. Now, we're actually going to use, we're going to pass in our whole model for this. So if we go up here, we're actually going to make this a strongly typed view. Model, contact. And we'll grab the contact model in our models namespace. And we'll actually make this lowercase so it doesn't conflict with the other model. I'm not sure why Visual Studio is giving us this red squiggly line saying that something wrong with our Razor view. Let's type that again. There we go. Ah, now we're good. From time to time, Visual Studio with the Razor syntax will get a little bit behind in terms of what we're typing and tell us we have an error when we don't. If that ever happens to you, just go in and retype your line of code, and hopefully it will pick it up the change. So we'll run this now. Okay, so now we have a very simple HTML form here with our first name and our field, and our last name and our email address and our mobile phone. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a new form with a new editor template. Okay, so with this code, we just demonstrated a very simple way of showing a basic form created directly from the model. We saw our display names, we saw our text boxes, but we actually want to take this kind of to the next level. We're actually going to go in and create an actual editor template that's specific to this contact model that we've created. So we're going to go under the shared folder. Under the shared folder, we're going to create a new folder called Editor Templates. And in that folder, we're actually going to add a new view called contact.cshtml. And this is going to be an empty template without a model, and it's going to be a partial view, and we're going to click Add. Oh, you can't put the .cshtml at the end of your view name. All right, so now we have our contact CSHTML view. And in here, we're actually going to put in a model and we are going to actually break apart our contact model into various editor fors. So we'll do one here for model dot first name. And we did one for last name, now we'll do one for email. And we'll do one for phone. We'll save that. If we go back to our contacts.cshtml, this time when it calls the editor for this model up here, it's going to use our custom editor template. And just to prove that, we'll put custom contact editor template. That way we'll see that it is in fact and actually a custom contact editor template. So now we'll run this. Actually, we don't want to do that. One of the common issues I run into with Visual Studio is I'll be on a file and I'll run it and it will actually want to load that particular file. To solve that problem, I go into the web application under the properties. And under web, I actually just change this to specific page. I don't put a value in here. It's just going to load up the default home page for the website. So I can save that and I can run it again. And now I'll get the actual home page as opposed to the current page that I'm editing. And then I will go to Contact. And now you see that we have our custom contact editor template. Now, some things don't quite look right here. If we go in and take a look at our code, we'll see that number one, I put a bunch of semicolons at the end. When you're working in Razor syntax, you don't put the semicolons. I get in the habit of doing it because most of the coding that I do is in C# type languages where all the lines end in semicolons. But you don't want to add semicolons at the end of your Razor syntax lines. The next thing is, for our editor, the only thing that we've done here is created an editor for a string. We haven't actually added any label tags. But we're going to add those shortly in another custom editor that we're going to create. So I'm going to delete this now that I know that we're actually running this inside of our contacts custom editor template. We're going to actually stop Visual Studio here. And then we're going to go back in here and we're going to create another new template. This new template is going to be called Bootstrap Editor. And it is going to be empty without a model and create as a partial view. Now, in this situation, all of our fields are strings. So we'll just come up here and say model string. Now we're going to come in here and actually create a template for our editor. Form group, this is another Bootstrap class. And then we're going to use an HTML helper method. Label 4. And we're going to pass in our model, which is going to be our individual property. See, once again, I put my semicolon at the end. Now we're going to do HTML text box 4. And we're going to pass in our model. Going to do new. And we're going to add in our placeholder that we talked about before. Now to get access to that placeholder data, that prompt information that we typed in up here, we reference that by typing in viewData.model metadata.watermark. And that's going to retrieve that prompt information and display it as a placeholder. So now we come in here and do style. Now what I like to do is I like to put a max width of none. By default, Bootstrap's going to limit the width of my form controls to a certain width. But I actually want them to take up the entire container in terms of width. So we'll add that in there. And that completes our little template. So now what I need to do is go back to my contact, and I'm going to actually type in Bootstrap editor. And this is actually going to use the Bootstrap editor template to create my form fields. I can save that and run it. Go to my contact page. And now you see I have first name, enter your first name, last name, enter your last name, email address, enter your email address, mobile phone, enter your mobile phone number. And so now I've had the ability to set up my form using Bootstrap and using custom editor templates. Now that's the standard vertical form. With a little bit of a change into our main CS.html file, we can actually make this into an inline form. And the way you do that is you come in here and you do new. Always throws object in there. Let's see, delete that. Class, form inline. I can save that. Now when I run this in Internet Explorer, you're now going to see an inline form. So before, each one was on its own line and it was vertical. But now you see how they kind of butt up right next to each other in an inline type of format. I was able to achieve that simply by changing my class on my form to form inline. Now the last form type that I want to show you is the form horizontal. To make use of this, I come in here and I change this to horizontal. But I also have to change, let's stop Visual Studio here real quick, but I also have to create another Bootstrap editor template, one called Bootstrap Horizontal Editor. So we'll add a new view. We'll call this one Bootstrap Horizontal Editor. We'll create it as a partial view, and then we'll click Add. So now we have our new partial view, and in this partial view, we're going to add the following. We'll add our model for string, since all of our properties are strings. And then we're going to add a div tag, class. This is the form group again. And we were going to do a HTML, label for, model, and then a new class call sm-2 as well as control label. So basically we're going to give our label a column width of 2. And then we'll do another div tag. We're going to give this one a call sm of 10. So in the Bootstrap 12-column grid layout, the first 2 columns will go to the label. The last 10 columns will go to the text box. Box 4 model, new, and we'll delete our object. Class will be set to form-control, and placeholder will be set to view data, model metadata, watermark. And up here, I added my semicolon again. Need to delete that. We'll save that. Then we'll come back to our contact thing here. We're going to change this to horizontal editor. And we will run this. And now we should have a horizontal Bootstrap form on our contact page. And we do. We have first name, last name, email address, phone, and your first name, your last name, your email address, and your phone number. Okay. Now the last thing we want to take a look at here real quick is the actual editor for and the ability to pass in the HTML attributes into it. So let's go back to our main index, or our main contact view. And so what we're going to do here is we're actually going to remove this, and we're just going to have a standard form. And we're going to come over here and actually we will rename this so that when we call editor for, it's not going to use it anymore. So we'll call this old contact. And we'll close it. Close the Bootstrap horizontal, Bootstrap editor, project properties, our model, and we'll just have our contact CS HTML page open. Now we can do new HTML attributes equal to new object. And then we'll come in here and we'll assign a new class, and we'll call this form-control. And now we can run this. Go to contact, and now we see our Bootstrap looking form. You'll notice the placeholder is no longer there. We don't have this set up to make use of the placeholder value. But you'll see the rest of it looks like a Bootstrap form. And the way that was achieved, if we actually view the source on this, we can scroll down here, and you'll notice that all of our input classes all have form control assigned to them. Right here, and right here, and right here, and right here. The way that was achieved was through passing in these HTML attributes to our editor for model, our editor for HTML helper method directly, and then it was applied to the overall editor form that was created. And that concludes how to make use of Bootstrap within your Bootstrap forms and how to use the editor for HTML attributes option.